Right, well,
Okay, so this is Senate Appropriations, and we're taking up S39, which is a bill that's been referred to us from Government Operations because it's carrying appropriation. And we have the reporter of the bill, Senator White, and we also have the chair of the committee, Senator Hardy, joining us as we get a run through of this bill. I'm not sure what action we'll take today, but wanted to take advantage of your time. And so we have only one copy of the bill, so we're going to rely on you to kind of give us the outline of what this does, the reason, and the cost estimates associated with it.
great. Thank you so much, Chair Kitchell. Yep, so for the record, Senator Rebecca White, I'm the Windsor County District Rep, as you know. So S39 is a bill that the Government Operations Committee voted out 6-0, so a unanimous decision. And it looks at our legislative compensation, benefits, and also sets up a study committee to look at that even further. The purpose of the bill is to address the longstanding barriers and reasons for a lack of, I think, what we have all seen with diversity as well as
Be careful with ageism.
Definitely not age in this regard, but financial ability to be a member of the General Assembly. As you all know, we've had multiple senators, for example, formerly Senator Josh Aaronstein even had a press release that, or a quote around the financial barriers and why he had to leave serving. So I can talk more about kind of the impetus for the bill, but I'm happy to start and go through.
Well, it's not a new, I mean, we had the Snelling report from a few years ago that talked about the financial factors that made it just about impossible to have a broader representation in the legislature. And when we get to people either have a business or retired or have independent sources of income. So
Yeah.
I think
I can dive in
have know that that's been a topic of discussion and what that looks like. So it looks like that's what you're presenting here.
Yeah, so the committee, if you do have a copy of the bill or you're following along, I'll just start with section.
No, there's only one copy
Okay.
at this point. But
So
we have more.
you'll have to trust me on this. Section 1 looks at reimbursement for professional development activities when those are approved by the House and the Pro Tem or the Pro Tem. And I think we wanted to include that because, as many of us have done in the past, you've attended a conference like the National Conference of State Legislators. If you have to take off from work, for example, you're actively not getting paid for that time. And that means that if you are a working Vermonter serving in the General Assembly, you're less likely to use the tools and resources available to us. So our goal with that first section was to take into account professional development and make sure that members of the General Assembly could, in fact, afford to take advantage of those.
It means that they get the per diem.
It means that they get reimbursement for professional development activities.
Costs of doing activities or not the pre-pay?
That not in this section, not in this section of the bill. This just looks at reimbursement, is my understanding. Of necessity.
Well, and that would be subject to approval by the speaker or
Or the Pro Tem.
If they got approval, they would get per diem.
Yeah, I think this is the per diem.
Yes, this is the section that looks at, so I can read.
No, we never got the per diem. We would get our expenses reimbursed, like the travel and the registration and so forth, but we didn't get paid
For the time.
for the time we spent. That was,
So
yeah.
that does say,
You go to a
okay,
conference,
the per diem.
you get paid for the flight and the room and the board, but you don't get paid for work.
Really keep track of that.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
one,
Okay, let's keep going.
okay, so, and I can talk more about that if folks have questions. Section 2 of the bill looks at health insurance. It adds that the General Assembly, it adds us to the definition of an employee as related to the state's health insurance policy, which ties us to the plan and the premium split that state employees are offered in the executive branch. This is currently an 80-20 split, and that would be made available to folks in the legislature. It also, this section gives us access to the Employee Assistance Program, or EAP. If you're familiar with EAP, it provides resources for employees for things ranging from mental health to other services. I personally have used EAP when I first went into recovery for alcohol. So it was a very important resource where I was able to get a therapist covered in part through EAP. So very important, and I don't think we take enough time to reflect on the weight of this job and the lack of resources when we are ourselves put in situations that can affect our mental health. So additionally, it adds a flexible spending account, an FSA for healthcare and dependent care expenses. Section 3 looks at
In how is that structured? Is there a contribution, or can we put in, or how does that work?
the FSA.
Yeah,
So my understanding of what we're doing in statute is that it gives us access to the FSA in this section, where we would
gives you
contribute.
us access to the state, which, and can anybody remind me, the state plan, is there contribution made and then the employee gets to put in?
I don't believe we will be getting a contribution into our own FSAs for this, but we have a handout that has that information that Mike Ferrant sent me that we can distribute to the community.
Just
That breaks down
because
what the state employees currently
my
get.
experience is, my employer makes a contribution and then we contribute on top of that. And I think that's what happens most places, so I was just wondering.
I think this is not that kind, this is a flexible spending account where you can say,
Pre-tax dollars.
it's pre-tax dollars to pay for healthcare expenses. So you
Eyeglasses.
can say, I'm gonna put in $2,000 into my FSA, and then if you have up to $2,000 in medical expenses, then it's tax free.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah.
My employer puts $350 in and I put $2,500 in, and that's what we can do with the limit each year. And that's pretty common, so I was just wondering.
Good question.
State employees, I think there's no,
Yeah, I don't.
no contribution from the.
Yeah, it's no state, and I think I'm sorry, I'm not gonna step on Senator White's toes unless you
Senator
ask.
Starr has a question.
Yeah, when you hook our health insurance to the state employees' health insurance, if the state employees association comes in and lobbies to get a better insurance plan, wouldn't that sort of be a conflict of interest, as we're now part of that insurance plan? So you're really, if you vote yes, you're voting to improve your own personal.
Well, that's inherent in this whole bill.
Yeah, the conflict of interest issue is.
This is inherent in the salary structure, because we would have to vote it and it would benefit the members of the legislature.
Yeah, and I would
so
say we spoke with, so the National Conference of State Legislators presented to us, and what was intriguing was when you look at other states, a lot of them tie it directly to their
Oh,
state
sure.
employees.
I mean, why not? You know, if you can get away with it, but it just appears to me like it would be when you can better yourself by voting yes, we're supposed to restrain from voting if it's gonna personally benefit us. And
But this whole bill is gonna benefit us.
For the
That's
next
the whole
election.
thing.
Yeah, but-
Anything that relates to compensation.
Think of it a different way. Think of it as benefiting a future legislature.
Yes.
Think of it as not you, but what would you want to have in place to attract legislators prospectively? And what would be available to them when they're here? It's not what we're doing for ourselves. It's what we're doing for legislatures in the future.
So you can vote for this and not run again,
You just,
because it
don't
won't.
vote for yourself.
Then you'll have no
Vote for the
conflict.
next generation.
And Senator Lewis,
well, the way I see this is it's opening the door to a full-time legislature.
Well, I don't think
It's
so.
starting that process.
Well, we heard
and-
the governor said he would support an increase in pay along with the limitation of how long we hang around. So I just wondered, did you deal with the how long we hang around piece?
And I can get to that within the study, we asked to look at that question of length of time of the session. So we don't posit an answer to that, but ask that it be looked at as a part of the group. And to continue on.
Or you get paid for X number, and if you can't get your work done, then you work for free?
That is a question the study committee could certainly dive into. So the third section, I
Can
actually
I
think.
ask you a quick question on
Yeah.
section 2, and that's just, when we talk about employees of the executive branch, I don't know if executive branch definition just means doesn't work for the governor, or does that mean really everybody?
Everybody in the administration.
So like all departments, basically? Okay, that's a, thank you.
So section 3 actually gets, I think, a little bit to Senator Lyons' point around trying to think about this a little bit differently because we have some legislative intent. We wanted to be really clear because I think the optics of a question of increasing your salary or adding benefits is really top of mind for all of us. So our intent here, I'll just read it because it's very important. It is the intent of the General Assembly that its members should receive compensation that is consistent with the amount of the average wage earned in the state. That was very important to us as a committee because we didn't want to position ourselves to be making a wage greater than what the average Vermonter was making. Obviously, it's prorated because we are serving normally around 18 weeks. So we're not getting actually the average salary of a Vermont resident, but we are getting a prorated amount, and that's the weekly compensation. So that brings us into section 4. Section 4 deals with the compensation of the Speaker of the House and the Senate pro tem. And what I learned as a new member during this process was that actually back in 2005,
We put up a special $10,000 addition.
you knew exactly what I was going to say. So we are looking at resetting the compensation connected to that average Vermont salary in this section. So currently we make around $898.44 per week. So that would be around $13,891.02 for our service.
That's the pro tem.
Thank you.
You're in pro tem.
That is if we were the pro tem or the speaker, that is what we would make. And then the reset would turn that into $1,340 a week. And then for the session, $20,716 annually. This also begins, as do all the compensation sections, in 2025. This is not going to impact seated legislators now. We are not raising our own compensation. We are looking at that for future legislators, where the health benefits do take effect prior.
All right, Andy.
Just a straight fiscal do this, yeah.
So that's,
It would be helpful to have 2005 session, what it would be with or without the bill, because instead of comparing it to today's 811, or even next year's 843, like what would it be in 2015, just with the CPI increase compared to what the bill says?
Are you?
what would you like us to do?
Just have current law 2025, what it would be with just the regular inflation increase, and then what does the increase?
So we went on that until we have the contract.
Because we tie it to the
Yeah.
workers' contract, so it'd have to be an estimate.
I did do some of that backward and forward.
Yeah, for what would it have looked like if we had done
Anyway,
it?
in the
Yeah.
absence of no action.
Okay, thank you.
So then section 5 gets to the General Assembly compensation reset for everyone other than the Speaker of the House and the Senate pro tem. Currently, we make around $811.68 per week, per session week, and that would reset to $1,210 per session week. This would also include compensation for special session and a new piece to this is that we would get compensation after adjournment. So we would be having the opportunity to have we would be entitled to 1/5 of our annual adjusted weekly salary off session. we felt that this was an integral part of the bill because most of us, from our understanding, do constituent services, legislative research, meetings with constituents, or other activities outside of the legislative session that is currently unpaid. I know for myself, I spend outside of session anywhere from 15 to 30 hours a week on legislative activities that I'm not being paid
Let
for.
me ask, do you think the Senate has a different demand? We have a bigger constituency than the House. And some might have one, two towns, and then others would, obviously, there's only 30 of us and 150 of them. Should we prorate that?
Senator Kitchell, you're asking
I
a
think that
former
would be-
House member a very
I'm
tricky
sure that's
question.
well.
Yeah, we did not take a look at we chose not to look at House versus Senate getting any kind of difference in compensation. From personal experience, I would say I was surprised of the level of increased work that the Senate was in comparison to the House. However, I'm one person and I would not speak for the actual difference in the two.
Well, Bobby was in the House, Rich is in the
I
House.
wasn't surprised at all. I knew what I was getting into. That's why I didn't run for the Senate until basically I got along in years and had extra time to donate.
Yeah, we did talk about this in committee, and we also talked, Madam Chair, about whether chairs should be paid some kind of stipend for chair work. And we chose not to take this issue on because of, the potential, the political optics of it. But it did come up as a question and a concern.
In the study committee, yeah.
Yes, and it's in the study, exactly.
So can you just back up? Is there the suggestion, because I was half listening, trying to read into, so in the off session, you're suggesting what?
That
Yeah,
you would
paid.
be you were entitled to 1 day or to be very clear, 1/5 of your annual adjusted weekly salary off session.
Even if you didn't do it.
No, you would have to certify, that's a really good point, Representative Sanders Starr, you would have to certify
That you
that you actually
work
had
that
done
much.
that work. And I know that we all take our oaths and
Certify
obligations
that.
very seriously.
Okay.
I would hope that we hold ourselves to a standard where folks would not be abusing that if they're not folks who are doing it, and especially the certification piece. I think we all do take our oaths very seriously in any kind of.
So in essence, you would have to do that on your time report every 2 weeks, and you'd have to
Yeah, like a
document
vision.
what you
Right.
did, but to generate.
Oh, is that
Am
not
I-
true?
am I correct?
Please, yes.
Jen Hogan, legislative counsel. So the adjournment compensation is just you're entitled to an amount equal to 1/5 of your annually adjusted
Whether
weekly
you
compensation.
did anything or not?
You are entitled to that as to receive it. In addition, there is a piece you would attest to based on preparation for meetings.
Oh, okay, I apologize.
So if you're serving on a special, on a summer study committee or on a joint committee and you spend time preparing, you can claim that time.
That's a good way for it.
Well, so it's interesting that you decided not to reward chairs for additional work for preparation of meetings and follow-up, but you did do it for everybody during the off session. So is there an explanation for that?
I don't have an explanation for that, other than we did feel that so there is a subsection B in here, the compensation extends to time spent preparing for a meeting of special committee or joint committees. So I do think a chair would be more likely to use that than
Someone on an
non-chair
L
member.
card.
Yeah.
Has the amount of reading.
That goes on all year,
Yes.
which isn't compensated for, but I do think chairs of committees, and I think of every chair in the building who does much more, so. I would say
We
not
asked
worth
the study
studying.
committee we asked the study committee to look at that question. And
Why? I mean, why didn't you just do it? I'm just concerned.
See,
So-
I will just be completely frank with you. I felt like as a new chair, it would look really bad for me to suddenly say, oh, I think we should pay all the chairs more money. And so
What is it about?
the off-session compensation, as I think Senator Kitchell just said, is that chairs usually have more off-session work that they have to do to prepare for their off-session meetings. And we asked the study committee to look at the chair's compensation so that it would be in a more, it would be in a House and Senate. If you want to add compensation for chairs, Senator Lyons, I think that is a great appropriations.
Well, you'll have to do it as an amendment
Oh,
individually.
But no, what
I
I'm
think we're
saying,
not gonna get that through here.
as I said before, this isn't about
And I'm
us.
speaking as a chair,
I know.
and we know that there's great variation among, scope and number of bills and, I don't want to get into your chair of XYZ and therefore the workload, or what committees you're on. So let's keep, I've got a meeting at 4, so we're gonna
Okay.
have to.
I'll quickly go through this section then. So we also have in section 4, child independent and elder care reimbursement. So that we tied as well to the state employees, and we had there was some unsurety about what their benefit, if that's the right way to put it, was around child and elder care, independent care. But we put it to be consistent with what we believe they have. So that is, if you are at or below $75,000, you are eligible for a reimbursement of up to $1,600 of actual expended amounts each year of the biennium, when the care facility facilitates that the member has the ability to serve. And that's in line with the current state employees benefit. The caveat there that this is available as long as it is not covered by other subsidies or sources, and that it extends to we also extended it to our legislative branch staff as well, who are not actually currently covered under this. We additionally have parking for members who have a physical limitation or it was impractical for them to walk, that they not incur overnight parking costs. It's very important that we not just think about members who don't have physical limitations, but in fact
Overnight parking costs?
Yes, so what has happened for some members is while we get free parking here, they're unable to get from here to, let's say, their where they're staying. And that place that they're staying charges them overnight parking. So that person is not being able to be reimbursed for the cost, where someone who's physically able would just leave their car here and not pay the parking costs.
I haven't even heard of that.
We did hear from a few members who have physical limitations who brought this concern to our attention. And we spoke with Mike Ferrant about if it was currently reimbursable, and it is not. There was a debate on if it was or was not covered already.
Legitimate.
It's not considered from our understanding.
Why don't they charge it with their room?
It's
Why
an
don't they-
accommodation.
It's on top of the room fee.
Well, then I'd find a different place to stay.
So I think the point is that
I mean, I stay from my seat right here to the end of the hallway from my door to go in. And
Well, I don't know, I guess it would suggest that they have to have some ADA, but I can't imagine the public could come and, well, unless you're renting a house, and most houses that got parking, I must be very, very limited where that.
It is happening with a certain hotel in town that recently started charging for parking.
Yeah.
That is where a number of legislators, particularly with physical disabilities, are staying. And so it's become a big issue for the people who are staying in this school.
brought to our
No,
attention.
it is not a reimbursable expense.
Like,
tell them
Not
it's
currently.
hard.
So section 6
You know,
looks at.
And I've lost my vice chair, but I'll stay for 4 more minutes and then I've got to leave, and then we'll pick this up tomorrow.
Thank you. Section 6 looks at extending protections for legislative leave to part-time employment. So right now, it's only covering full-time employment. So those changes would be that it changes the date of notice to the employer from within 10 days after filing primary nomination petitions to within 14 days after being elected. So Section 7 is the creation of that work group that we talked about. So we're very close to the end. So the work group would be looking at the topic of legislative service in the General Assembly. Its membership would include 3 House members, 3 senators, not all from the same political party. House members appointed would be by the Speaker. Senators would be appointed by the Committee on Committees. The working group would make recommendations on staffing, benefits, compensation, length of legislative session, all the things that we've talked about so far. It would look, I can go into specific questions that we asked them to do, but in the interest of time, I'll note that it would also look at staffing, which we haven't talked about. We do not have any staff as individuals, and it would look at the administrative support that's currently needed. Finally, just so you know that what you're getting, the fiscal analysis we have so far, still waiting on the fiscal note, is that it would be $875,000 for fiscal year 2024 to implement this, to move forward with this bill.
And that's the healthcare.
And it's the healthcare piece, because the last section you should know are all the different effective dates. We have multiple different effective dates by each section of the bill. Section 6 and 7 take effect on passage. Section 8, July 2023. Section 2, parts of 4, 5 are starting in January 2024. Section 1 begins in 2024, and then the remaining sections, like that compensation piece, doesn't go into effect until 2025. So that's my high-level run through. Thank you.
And I'm gonna run, if we want to,
I can ask my question offline.
why don't we, because, thank you, we're just
Thank
trying
you.
to get the run through on this, and then we'll take it up again tomorrow. So I'm going to, say that we've done, our
Our share of work today.